perhaps you were over at your mom's house or your grandmother's house and you saw some old vintage textiles and perhaps you thought they were all washed up. Well, today on the Quilt Show, Mary Kerr is going to show you that what was once old is now new again. Stay tuned. It's a new day on the Quilt Show with your co-hosts, Alex Anderson and Ricky Timms.
Welcome to the Quilt Show, everyone, and audience. Thank you so much for coming today.
We're glad you're here.
Yes. Now, whether you're a lover of old antique quilts or all over the new modern look, well, today's show for you.
It's going to hit it. Yes, absolutely. And on the top of the show here, I want to share with you something that happened to me recently that I got so excited about, and I hope you will too. Alex and I are going to be doing a few things over the next few shows and maybe the next couple of years where we're actually showing you some projects that you can make. And I think that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I hope this is one of them.
Yes, yes, yes. And I want to say this, too, that I know for myself, I get my inspiration from antique quilts, and such is the case for what you're doing today.
Absolutely. So recently I was teaching in the state of Mississippi, and I met up with one of the TQS members that we know, Mary Holman, and Mary brought to me, to my class, she brought a quilt that was given to her by her mother, but it was made by her great-grandmother during the Civil War. And I just want to, Alex, if you'll hold up that cover, because they called it Sumter Rose. Isn't that fabulous? They're 25-inch blocks, and there's 6 of them.
And they're caveman style.
Well, kind of, yeah. This is so primitive. And as you look at the quilt, you'll see that it was done with corded, hand-combed batting. The stitches are somewhat irregular. Even each of the blocks are so funky.
What kind of shape was it in?
Horrible shape, and that's the thing. It's falling apart. The green dyes, as many of you know, green dyes deteriorates fabric. It turns from green to brown, and so this quilt has kind of lost its life of use, but it's still a family treasure. And I'm going to bring it back to life with doing the Sumter Rose pattern. So that's what we're going to do today.
Cool.
So anytime you've got a pattern like this, and I say pattern because you may only have a picture of the quilt, draft your pattern, make it the size you want it to be. I was lucky to be able to measure the blocks, and I knew they were 25 inches. So I ended up creating the templates for the quilt that I would need, and even here's one of the templates for this quilt. And in this case, I'm going to use a turned edge applique. Now that, for those of you that know me, that's a little shocking, right? So, but I wanted to be a little bit true to that. I'm also going to take my temperature. We're also going to take this, I'm calling this the fast train to finishville.
Love it.
Because I want to finish this quilt fairly fast. I'm using Ricky Timms stable stuff, all right, poly. This will live inside your quilt underneath the applique forever and ever, amen. I'm simply tracing the pattern on that. So now that the pattern's gone, Alex, answer this question. How many of these units do I need in the quilt?
Okay, so it's 6, and it's times 4.
No, but just for the block. Sorry, for the block.
Oh, for the block. Okay, 4. I can do that one.
Yeah, 4.
Yeah, I can do 4.
4. All right, so I have taken 4 layers of stable stuff so I can be quick about cutting this out, right?
Yep.
I don't need this to be terribly accurate because if you look at the original quilt, every one of these guys is a little bit funky.
On the finished size, no 1/4 inch.
No 1/4 inch, this is finished size, absolutely. So here's a trick. When I cut into this guy, I'm gonna fold back when I use fabric, but when I do it here, I don't care that I make a little X in there. So I'm just gonna slice those guys, get my foundations very quickly done, and boom, there are 4 foundations for my applique, all right? And if you want to deal with, thank you.
I'm going to be the cleaning lady.
The cleaning lady. So the next thing I do to be quick and fast is I ended up taking a big strip of long green, and I used my template, but I went cut, 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 and this is 4 layers. So every time I made a cut, I've got 4 of these guys that I'm going to be using in the quilt. Again, it's very fast. Another little trick that I do is I put a pencil mark on the right side. So if I took all 4 of those guys right here, I would go pencil mark, pencil mark, pencil mark, because I want this to be on the right side.
Okay.
That only matters because of the little red doodads that come on later. Okay.
God, I thought, why? It's hand dyed.
Yeah, but even so, because this is different than that.
Right.
All right. So you want the pencil mark side to go down on the back side of your fabric.
Okay.
In this case, it's hand dyed, so it doesn't matter, but that's where that's going to go. Now I've got one that's already started over here, and I would, sorry, let me grab that guy. Come on. It's stuck.
Yes, it is.
It's stuck.
There you go.
There we go. When I put this down, I'm going to have trouble manipulating it if I don't adhere it.
Right.
So I use 505. Now, I'm not saying do this at home, but I do it at home, okay? I just simply take it like this, and I go, whoop, 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 like that, with sound effects.
Oh, do you? Every time?
What's the sound effect? There you go.
Okay.
And then I'll put that face down on the back side of my fabric. I will rough cut.
Notice I moved my hand.
I noticed your hand went away real fast. I'm going to rough cut that. And when I'm cutting these guys, this is now where I'm going to bend it back. I'm going to cut into it. I'm going to peel it back, so when I cut that, I don't chop into my applique
And
fabric.
why no 1/4 inch?
Because this, if you look at the pattern, has overlap.
Oh, okay.
The little red doodads are overlapping there, so I don't need that one. I need this to be cut exact, so you get the idea, all right?
Yep.
So now here's this guy. Oh, I guess I better use this guy. I'm going to turn this edge using the glue stick. Do you call it a pen? A glue stick?
A glue stick that's meant for fabric.
Right.
It's quick drying. Good news, bad news.
So, and I like the fact that it has a color on it so you can see where it's going. And in this case, I'm coming over to the iron. I'm simply going to fold that back onto the glue with my fingers right up against, see how quickly that was?
Yeah, lickety-split, man.
And with my iron, boom. That is so done, and that edge is turned and ready to go for the applique. That's great for those guys, because those guys are fairly easy. But
Well, they're long stretches.
yeah, but we got this guy.
Uh-oh, yeah.
All right? So I'm back to, does everybody out there remember whenever you used the rotary cutter for the first time? And it was like amazing, right? Well, I will tell you, it's been the same thing since we've discovered the applique.
A couple years ago.
And I love these guys. So when I'm doing these little turns, these tight turns, now let me just go back to here. I don't feel on this long seam that I need to turn this using the tools. I'll do it just like I did on the previous one. But for this guy, for going around a little corner, absolutely. I'm going to get my glue stick out. And remember, you don't do this for a long area. You do it for a short area. You're going to hold with one and iron back with the little ironing surface that's there, and just pull those back over and around. Notice
It's like
that
magic.
I clipped those curves.
And the glue does dry clear, and it's water
Water-soluble,
Water soluble,
it goes
thank you.
away.
Yeah.
So I can press that down, and all I'm going to do is just show you that one little edge. But look at that edge when it's finished.
Perfect.
It's beautiful.
It's
So
perfect.
that's what I've done with all of those. So that's the preparing of the applique. The next thing, of course, that has to be done. See, I did it again. At home, I have one of those irons that you
Pop-up
leave
irons,
down
you
like
know?
there, and it pops up. But I have to remember to do that. Okay, so Alex, I'm going to let you just look at the picture, because sometimes we get all so fussy about where everything has to fit. On this quilt, no fuss. So you've kind of got a center.
I got the center right there, so I'm going to put that there.
Oh, and here's a tip.
Okay.
I marked the word top at the top. So when you put it, this is your top.
Okay, why?
Well,
I'm curious.
I guess I could, but this is because the way I did the pattern. It
Okay.
could go anyway, because this is kind of a funky applique. It could go anyway.
But I'm going to go like that,
All right,
okay?
I'll let you do that.
Then I'm going to have these guys go
They're kind of
here.
north, south, east, and west.
Yeah.
And I love that they kind of get tilted, or they don't go in the center.
I need another one.
Oh, okay. I have one.
Listen.
Well, if I don't have one finished, you can use
That's
that
okay.
one.
We get the idea, all right.
Yeah.
Then the antlers.
Yep, I call them antlers,
Okay.
because they do look like little
Now
antlers.
now let's look at this, because I do love, okay, there.
Yep.
Yeah, they are. There we go. I love it that this quilt, found its way into your life because it belongs with you. You know what I mean?
You know, people go, that's so not you. I'm like, you missed the point. This is so me.
It's so you. It's ridiculous.
Is so me. Now then, one thing we didn't do, just for the sake of the demo, I didn't take all of these guys and turn them. But I did on the quilt, and I would turn them. But these guys are just going to get placed. Let's do that together, Alex. There's 4. So those are the right sides. This is the left sides. So I'm going to do all of these sides. Okay. You do all of these sides.
I don't know what you're telling me to do, Ricky.
Whatever I say, right?
Yeah, whatever you say.
But you get the idea. It's gonna,
it's just
they're going to get put into place.
Yeah.
And then these are the center guys.
I mean, is there really seriously a difference? Seriously?
Well, there's 3 templates for those 3 spots. Wow. Now, of course they don't. Of course, if I was just winging it.
Or having me do it.
Yeah, well, then there you go. But look, I mean, they're just going to fit in there. They're going to do that. That's the idea. Yeah. But here's where it gets really exciting for me now, okay? I am doing a blanket stitch.
I know, I love this.
And it's not like a blanket stitch like I normally do, where I really highlight the thread. I'm going to be using a monopoly. I've got Superior's really fine monopoly. Here is another really critical thing. I'm going to be using a 60 needle because I want the smallest hole possible.
And it was okay with the monopoly?
Fabulous. Okay, fabulous,
cool.
Okay?
And then what on the bobbin?
I'm using anything in the bobbin because I'm turning my tension down so that the bobbin wins the war and everything goes to the back side. I am dialing my stitch to a 0.8 wide by a 2.5 long.
That's the blanket stitch.
That's the blanket stitch, which will go forward, left, right, forward, left, right. And as I come into this, and I don't know if we need to get any closer detail than I'm showing here, but forward, left, right, forward, left, right, forward, left, right.
You aren't going to see it because it's going to disappear.
It is so tiny. It is truly invisible. And when it comes into the quilting stage, you will never, ever see this turned edge.
And that's what I've experienced. You might look at it and go, oh, I can see it. But by the time it's quilted, that baby is gone.
Yeah, and you can see as it's coming out the back, it's just amazingly invisible.
And also, I want you to talk about the hover mode.
When on the Bernina, some of the machines have hover, so that if you come up to a point, for example, I'll just scoot on up here. When I get right to the point, I am ready, it'll hover so I can pivot and then continue from there.
That was like glory hallelujah when I discovered it. It was great.
Okay.
Okay.
Now the finished quilt. Say the finished quilt. This is my finished sample because I've not yet made all 6 blocks for the quilt. But they are 25 inches. Look at this.
I love it. I love it in the quilting.
I decided to stay true to the clamshell fan quilting that was in the original.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, well, you can see in the pattern that it was exactly like that. And when I do this, I'm going to say for real, I'm going to custom quilt it in a whole lot of different ways because I just want to own the quilting on it.
Okay.
But to mark this, I marked it from the back side using the blue Mark Be Gone pins. And I know that some people will say, oh, I don't use that because it comes back. Yeah, if you spritz it. But if you immerse this in water, I've never had one come back. I also don't iron this while it's blue.
Why on the back?
I just did it on the black because it would be easy to mark because I don't have to even worry about the applique design on the front side. So I just used this circular template with the rings and the concentric circles to mark this quilt with this pin. And I will tell you that I did not immerse this in water for the show. I did spritz it pretty heavily, and you can see that the blue is all gone.
Pretty good.
And there is the Sumter Rose.
Yay! What do you guys think? Yes? I love it.
Right.
I love it.
I love it.
And I'm going to say, too, I love machine applique, and this kind where you can't see it, I will never do it by hand again. There's no need to. You know, so anyways. Cool.
Unless you're in love with handwork, and that's fine too, right? You could make this by hand. But there are so many old, wonderful, wonderful antique quilts out there. Why not make them? Give them a new life. Make them.
And I want to say to that, though, I would ask permission of the owner, just out of courtesy.
Sure.
I would do that. You don't have to, but I would.
And More antique stuff coming today. That's the cool thing.
We discovered Mary Kerr's work at Houston this last year, and we were out of our mind over her special exhibit. You were,
I was,
get
yes,
over here, you got
I
to see
was.
this. And so we are so lucky that she had room in her schedule to be with us on such short notice. So when we come back, you are going to just be so inspired to pick up the old and blend it with the new. Stick around.
Woohoo!
Welcome back, everyone, and I certainly enjoyed that demo.
Thank you.
But it equally was wonderful to watch you do finished edges.
I know, that was fun. And I failed to mention that the Sumter Rose is really named after Fort Sumter, where the first basic battle of the Civil War started. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited the show to keep going because it's old and new, and I am very inspired by your segment, but also what's coming up.
It's going to be so much fun, you guys. Welcome to the Quilt Show, Mary Kerr.
Yay, Mary! Thank you. Thank you.
I just have to say, first of all, I mean, there's partly a reason why you're here is because I did go goo-goo over your exhibition in Houston.
Well, we all did. We all did.
And you guys are going to get excited about it. But first of all, let's just do a little rewind. You have loved vintage textiles for quite a long time.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, even in books, you've done other things with them.
Right. The Twisted book is my 6th book, and most of them that I've done have been with Vintage Textiles, giving people permission to play with those pieces of old.
Well, let's look at some quilts to show just immediately
What we're talking about.
What we're talking about, all right?
Super unusual.
So the first quilt.
The first quilt that you see here is called Zia's for Zoe. All of these quilts, I pieced the tops and had them finished by other long armers, by long arm quilters. I worked with 21 different ones. So you see the fabric that the Zia is made out of is from the 1930s. They were just little tongues of fabric that were buttonhole stitched. I put them into this piece Z and sent it to Karen McTavish, and she did the fabulous quilting.
Oh,
and did you just say, have fun, Karen, do your own thing?
I did.
Okay.
I have worked with all of these long armers before and trust them implicitly. And so I just said, here's the top. It's for a modern book.
Right, and
Because vintage is modern quilts with a vintage twist.
And I do think it's important to state that whole modern aspect because you are using the vintage textiles, but these quilts have a very modern in that definition feel with the big open spaces in quilting. All right, so let's look at the next quilt.
The next one is what do we do when all that we have are 3 blocks? I had 2 pineapple blocks and 1 other little log cabin piece that went with it. Pieced them together and gave this to Candace West. And Candace had never worked with vintage before, but she wanted to play with me. And so she took and did the modern quilting in the negative space, but then hand quilted those beautiful, beautiful blocks.
And I love in the machine quilting area how she mimicked the log cabin and then filled in with little doodads here and there.
Well, and then I want to go back again to this whole antique bits and pieces and how people have perceived it and what you're trying to give them the permission to do.
Well, for so long, when you would get a vintage block, so you would get those vintage pineapple blocks, and it was like, no, those are from the 1880s. You really need to take care of them and preserve them. To do what? Go in a trunk, go in a box, or a drawer. I think that they can be preserved and enjoyed and protected, far more incorporated into a textile that will live on. And
I mean, these are exciting, you know, and like I take a look at the next one. I mean, I have my grandma's quilt, and what is that?
Double wedding ring.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, I mean, and those quilts are a dime a dozen, but not this.
And we see lots of double wedding rings that were never finished. You know, the hexagon's the most unfinished pattern in American history, and the double wedding ring is a close second.
Oh, really?
You know, they'd start them, the arcs are easy.
Get all excited about that part.
And then put those little football shapes in and that other stuff? No. I mean, so I only had the 1 strip.
That's it.
And could I make those extra strips to do a traditional double wedding ring? Yeah, but I didn't want to.
So when you have these 3 rings, do you visualize it in your mind? Do you go to your design wall? I mean, how do you take a stab at it?
Most of the time, I'm just visualizing how I can showcase just that one that fragment. I mean, these were throwaway pieces. These were blocks that never grew up to be a top, let alone a quilt. They were oftentimes not finished for very good reason.
Okay, yeah.
You know.
So, I mean, do you have to do any repair work or reconstruction on some of the really poor quality of the construction?
Some of them we do, like the pineapple block that you saw before. The fabrics were very thin, so I added an extra layer behind that. The double wedding ring, I literally used fusible. I put fusible on the back, trimmed it straight, and then put it down and finished it with a buttonhole.
Ay, ay, ay.
All right, so now the next one, bow, boom. Just
wow.
Yeah, just fabulous. Tell us about that.
This one's called Flower Power. That bubblegum pink is a bit garish, and a whole quilt out of that would just kind of blow your mind. But by putting it with that gray, it just gave us a softer place to play.
That was like from the 30s, right? That bubblegum?
That's 1940s.
40s, okay. It also reminds me, what, in the late 1800s they had that too, right? It was a little bit different.
A little bit different with that. Let me go back for a second. The double wedding ring quilt was quilted by Debbie Kaufman.
Oh,
I want to give my quilters credit for this.
And then
Flower Power was done.
And there's rickrack on Flower Power. Okay, I'm sorry.
There is. No, Flower Power was quilted by Linda Thiefold.
Okay.
And when it came back, I added the rickrack, which was from my grandmother's stash.
Oh,
I think my children are going to treasure that quilt because their great-grandmother's rickrack is on it, more so than if the rickrack was just in my stash and they found it later and said, "What
what's this?
Mom do
Who's
with
this?" And there you have somebody's rickrack. Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to continue on. Tell us about the next one.
This one is called Square Dance, and it was done by Kim Stotzenberg. I had a fragment of a top. And so when we're looking at these tops, and it had some places where they were coming apart, I literally cut the 10-inch squares around the damaged areas and then pieced them into the green. And Kim did her amazing quilting
and it's the perfect green for that quilt. I mean, that in itself, I mean, even though we're looking at the quilting and we're looking at the block, you still have to make some great design choices on how you're going to set this all together.
Well, I think this is a perfect marriage, too, of contemporary, but you are a quilt historian and an appraiser.
Yes, so I've got all of those different hats, but I also can be very, I don't know what the word is, non-traditional with that, or almost, okay, those are the rules, but I don't want to play by those. I don't have to do that.
We could hang out.
We can hang out, yes, we could. And some of those solids that we picked, that was one of my frustrating things. I go into a quilt shop with a block and say, trying to match those solids. Right. We don't always have those opportunities to find them. So some of them, the gray that was in Flower Power, it was a vintage sheet. Well, it was a sheet that I used for appraisal table and washed about 100 times.
Wow.
So I got the right color with that. Whereas the others, some of them were new, some of them were old. Working with the fabric companies now, like Pepper Corey's new line, some of Riley Blake's new stuff, is fabulous because they are solids that we can match. We can find them easily.
That's
so
interesting.
I'm curious, where does your heart sing? I mean, when I say that because, I mean, you've had a journey, and that's the beautiful thing about quilting is we're all on a journey, which is why I can do Sumter Rose at the top of this show,
right.
and because I see the journey. And your journey, is it the fragmented bits of vintage pieces, but does it tie in with your historian aspect? Do you love being an appraiser? I mean, where does your heart sing?
Right now, I've gotten to the point, although I love all of those, I think if you don't love something, you shouldn't be doing it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But what I love inspiring people to say, what can I do with my grandmother's block? Or what can I do with that little pieces? I love being able to give permission to people to play with these vintage textiles, to put them into something that they will use and enjoy. If we can pass down the memories of these vintage textiles to the next generation, then quilting is going to continue to live on. Okay, unless we can get those younger people into our circle and into our world and get them to spend their dollars, we're not going to be able to continue at the pace that
we will die off.
We will.
The end. Yeah. Before we go to break, one more quilt we want to look at.
This is called Wild Goose Chase. I had the fabrics in there from the 1870s, the oldest fabrics that I used. I had one long strip. I don't know if they made 5 strips for the border and forgot, or they made one and said, I am not doing this, or whatever. But I just had one long strip, and I wanted it to go in a different manner. Kathy Franks did the quilting on this one, and she used that vivid turquoise with the tobacco-colored brown, and it's just stunning.
Those people must have been really excited when you called and said, do you want to be a part of this project?
So I think they were. Some of them I think were a little stumped with,
But
but when I could put the parameters on there and say, this is for a modern quilt project, and this is, I trust whatever you will do.
And I want to say that all of the quilts are in this book, Twisted.
Yes.
And all the quilters are represented in the whole bit. It's a beautiful book.
Thank you. We were able to put, the fragment before, the pieces in progress, the quilters in progress, as well as the finished projects. And my artist statement and theirs. So it was a collaborative effort to put these all together.
Well, when we come back, we're going to take damaged textiles and we're going to work some magic with that. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Today we're having an exciting time with Mary Kerr. And Mary, honestly, I love the show and tell, and then we come over here to get ready for this segment, and then I'm blown away again. So I really love what you're doing. Tell me about the pieces that we're looking at. These are just fragments. They're frayed. They're obviously old and really ready to be discarded.
They really were. This is an example of some of the pieces that we see that we're working with. And you can see when you get a vintage piece, you have to examine it and say, okay, can I use this whole piece? If you go closer, you can see that this blue fabric is literally shredded. And it's either we're going to need to go in and replace this piece, which is more work than I want to do right now, or we're going to have to cut around that. So when you have a number of them, you can look at them and say, okay, well, here's another hole. We've got problems. We're going to have to go in this way. Or we go and we find those ones that are from this same grouping.
Before you go further, let's talk about this a little bit more, because what I'm noticing, because now I'm playing the game of what happened, I'm seeing that most of the problem in these guys is the same fabric.
Yes,
it's a culprit.
It's a very flimsy fabric. And so it could have been that, sometimes those were just the fabrics that were so worn out. Other times, this is a very strange weave. It's pulled through every one of these seams.
That's very unusual.
And it's stretchy and it's rayon. One of the problems you have when you're looking at scrap quilts from the 1940s, you had a wide range of fabrics that were used. So if you want to be successful in working with these, you either look for all cotton pieces or you make arrangements to work around some of those odd and ooky.
And I would have to think that if also the considerations were, you're kind of fortunate, you've got a lot of these strange little blocks, but if you only had a few of them, you're going to have to repair this. That would be something you would invest your time in, and that's okay.
So when I look at these, and I had probably 25, 30 of these, that gives me more design options that I can take and put lots of different pieces together, as opposed to if I only had one or two, I might have to go with either a smaller quilt or something that gave me more negative space to play with, because I only had a small thing in the
Now, I'm also looking at another clue. I see that this was at one time stitched.
Yes.
It was seamed together. Did you find a quilt top that you've unsewn, or is this how they came? Tell me about that.
I believe they were sewn together at one point. I did not take them apart. I think somebody probably started taking them apart to use them for something and went, oh, that's more work than I want to do. So, what I work with are those blocks and tops and pieces, or blocks and fragments and pieces that never grew up to be a quilt.
Right.
Never grew up to be a top.
And where do you find them?
Antique shops and auctions and...
do you ever shop online? Do they ever show up on eBay?
eBay's a good thing. As quilters, we end up being the, I call them guilt gifts. People receive things and they feel guilty because they don't know what to do with them, so they bring them to me.
Oh, that's nice.
So that's fun to play with. I travel extensively and I stop a lot at the antique shops, but I'm the one going into the boxes underneath of the tables.
Right,
because I'm looking for those pieces that were thrown out and were forgotten and give us tremendous opportunities to play.
Okay, I think I'm coming to the end of my questions, but this is the last one. I know that with some of these old vintage pieces, when they're hand-stitched together, it can be really poorly hand-stitched together. Are you concerned about that, or are you going to do something that's going to somewhat stabilize it as you move forward and you're not going to be worried about it?
We're going to stabilize them. I'm not as concerned, but some of them are fairly easy to fix. Well, now that I want to find. Okay, so like this one, where it's just the outside edge.
Right.
That's very easy to come in and restitch.
Sure.
Okay. But for the most part, these I'm going to, and that's what I'm going to show you next, I'm going to add an extra layer of protection and stabilize these. Another option that I've done with these, as the quilt we saw first, the double wedding ring, is that I applied fusible on the back. And so that fusible gives it an extra layer of protection,
right.
And helps us work with some of those fabrics that are a little more fragile.
And the quilting is going to stabilize it too,
yep.
if you're
It's
doing the
gonna hold
kind of
it in
quilting
place.
that you've done. All right, so now then, thank you for all of that information. Now let's take these pieces and turn them into something we can use.
These are some that I've decided right now it's more work than I want to work with. But I have others that, and here we have that same fabric, but it's not falling apart.
Right.
Okay, I have others that I want to use. This is basically, we're going to make little pockets, little pillows, so that is going to end up looking like this. This is lined.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So basically, I'm going to decide what size I want them and create a template. Now, I will tell you, I can't make a template and sell it, because every piece I work with is going to be a different size.
Sure.
Whether it's a football shape or whether it's a circle or a square or something.
Or a petal on a leaf like your grandmother's flower garden.
There's all kinds of, and so brown paper bags are my good friend. and I can, so I've made something.
Freezer paper's my good friend.
I know.
That would be possible.
Freezer paper works as well too. So I've cut out this template. I use solids. Wherever I put that piece, yes. I use solids because they're the same on the front as on the back.
Right.
Okay, I don't have to worry about which right sides are together, but you're basically putting right sides together. Go use that ugly fabric that you're not finding any place that you're not using anywhere else, or that thin fabric.
Right, it's too flimsy to really officially use in a quilt.
Because it's not going to be seen.
Right.
And then I'm going to pin it in place, and we're just going to show you as we go. Okay, and I'm going to stitch it all the way around. I'm not going to leave a start and stop.
Right.
So that when I get done with this, I'm going to take it and trim off these edges and trim down a little bit.
Okay, let's look at this one to show what that looks exactly like so we can compare to the two. This is the full thing. So you're not trimming this down to like a 1/4 inch, you're just leaving all of that out there.
That's more work than I want to do.
Okay, I'm with you because we're on the fast train to finish today.
Fast train to finish build. Now, some people, if it really bothers them, then they, by all means, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead and do that, but I don't.
Tapering it down and just being careful not to snip that corner right there.
And so what I'm doing is basically taking these two pieces apart, okay? And I'm going to snip here so that I have an opening, and then just turn it.
Turn it inside out.
I'm turning it inside out through those corners. Use my fingers to get it going the right direction.
And then you'll press the edges.
You press it carefully. I mean, they come out kind of funky looking. Okay, they need a little bit of work. Okay, so I'm pulling the edges out as much as I can and pressing it well so that I come up with these.
When you press this, do you ever find do you ever smell anything? Does anything ever melt? Do you ever find that they put some crazy fabric in there that you didn't know was going to be crazy when it got hot?
Most of the time, I've already identified that these are all cottons.
Okay.
And so they're not going to melt. If there's something that I'm concerned about, I will take one of the throwaway blocks that has that same fabric in it and press it first to see if it's going to.
Smart.
And, to be honest, if it smells really bad, we're just getting rid of it.
Okay.
Those.
I am with you on that, okay? Smells bad now, it's going to smell bad later, right?
Absolutely. Put those over here. So what I've done here is shown, we have a number of these that you can spread out your solid fabric and do some
Look at you guys, this is eye candy now.
So now we can play with these. Do you want to do it in a pumpkin seed 4-patch?
Well, that's certainly an option, isn't it?
That's an option. You'll see that option in a little bit. Do you want to do it where it's let's do 3 in a row so that you have a pillow with just those 3?
Can I play?
Absolutely. Let's see what you come up with.
I don't know, but let's go this direction because I didn't.
Absolutely.
We always, we prepare before we run the cameras.
We didn't do this earlier.
So that kind of gave me an idea there. That's an option.
And that's a fun place that you can take these and put the extra quilting in here.
Yeah, but you got 5, and now there's 4. So now you've just got 1 left over.
I get to make something else. I get to make something else with it. Basically, what I do when I get these in place is I pin them and I run a buttonhole stitch. Okay, if you are inclined to do, I know you're not, but if you're inclined to hand applique, go right ahead.
You never know, but I'm probably not.
Fast and furious is good for me, and I like the look of a machine buttonhole.
Okay, I do
stitch.
too. So.
And that's all of our basic machines have
the buttonhole.
Have the buttonhole stitch, and then once you get it in place, then you can choose what quilting that you want to do with that.
Okay, why do you even think that you have the permission to do all this? What brought you into that kind of mindset?
Well, we say that the quilt police are alive and well in our community, okay, and they're not invited to my party. And part of that, I believe, is because of my upbringing. I was raised in a small southern college town. Okay, and our house was very different than anyone else's house. My dad was a college professor, and he worked with a lot of international students, and they were always at our home. They were always at our table. I loved being able to hear those different voices and share. They would share their cultures and find that we don't always have to do it the way that my small southern town told me that I needed to do things. I don't have to be friends with the people that group said. So it just translated into just about everything else we did in our lives, and especially for me within this quilting.
Well, it's empowering, it's freeing, and I get goosebumps hearing that story. Let's look at one more quilt, because I really, really love what you've done here, because this is about now, because your new book, Twisted, is about taking this and turning it into a modern playground.
So this is one that I did 5 of them. So I have 5. I could do this again. I'm not inclined to do the same thing over again, but I have. So seeing what the difference is on a dark background as opposed to a light background, using 5 of them. And you see that these are not all the exact same shape, but by putting them together and leaving the spaces between here, they work together.
They do work together.
It fools the eye into saying that that they all work together, and they're perfectly symmetrical. And we know that with most things, they're not.
Well, before we go to the big ta-da, I've got you mentioned something that I thought was super idea. You called them seed bags?
Seed bags.
Seed bags.
I do. I will take, and they're very simple, very inexpensive. I use gallon-sized Ziploc bags, and I clear because I can see through them. If I have a block, if I have these orange blocks, I will put them in that bag. And then I will put other things that I think might go with them.
The background fabric, or
another
even
block.
Fragmented pieces that feel like they belong together.
They might go together. And if I'm not working on them, then I will just kind of let them percolate. Let them
set over there.
Set over there. And so as a seed bag, I call them that because then when I pull them back out, I can either choose to weed out some of that, or I can fertilize it with more stuff, or I can just have all of those pieces together to start working on and play with.
Isn't that a great idea? I mean, everyone, that's a great idea. Because sometimes we don't have all the answers right now, and we do need to think about it. And if you've put it all together and then you go put it all away, you have to go reassemble it.
You have to reassemble it. And the other thing I found is I tend to, if I don't put them together, I will use that fabric in something else. And especially when we're working the vintage pieces, you might find that one perfect color that you don't know where you got it, or you don't know, somebody else might not be making it again.
Sure.
It could have been from 4 years ago. So by keeping them together, I can continue on that vision.
Okay, everyone, you're going to help me with the audience. I want a drum roll. You know your feet, you know, here we go. Drum roll, and boom, there's the finished quilt. Isn't that stunning? Oh my gosh. Now tell us about it. Tell us a little bit about it.
This was one that I used these same pieces, the same fragments that you see here. I put it together, and this quilt was quilted by Gina Parks. I loved the pumpkin seeds. I also love the 4-block mentality in many of our antique pieces, and I wanted to give it that fresh voice. Gina did some amazing work with her ruler work, and her feathers are fabulous. And I think it was a wonderful mix of the my vintage and her new. And it's stunning to look at.
I think it's great. Well, vintage is all about petticoats, pantaloons, and having fun. And we're going to have more vintage when it comes back, because you, Mary Kerr, are going to show us how to do some vintage pillows.
Yes.
Right? Okay, don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
back, everyone. Mary, I have to tell you that I love that last segment because these ho-hum blocks that what am I going to do with them? Totally new eyes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I love the idea of the seed bags where you can put stuff in and think about it and switch it up and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I love giving people ideas because sometimes you have that, well, maybe this will work, but let me think about it. And I don't want you to put all those things back away and not have an opportunity to remember that.
And then it's not a big fat mess in every corner of your sewing room, right?
And I love that I use clear bags because I can see through and see what is there.
Right.
As soon as we put them in something where, like a drawer, we forget that they're there.
Right. Okay, so we're going to do pillows. You teach a lot. Do you do things like this in your class, pillows or more quilts?
I do. I have a wide range of lectures and workshops that I do. Most of the time they work in coordination with some of the exhibits that I have. This particular project right here, this is a pillow that I did called B is for Bryce.
Yeah.
See which way we need to go for this.
This is very good, yes.
This was designed because many people would see the quilts and go, oh yeah, but I got to wait until I can quilt better. I got to wait until I can do that custom quilting, or I have to wait. This is one that I quilted, the only one in the book that I quilted. I have quilted by hand and by machine. I prefer to quilt by check these days. Right. That works very well for me. But this is an opportunity to take that single block and quilt it with very gentle wavy lines so that it can be passed down, passed down and enjoyed as that one single block.
But this is not just wavy lines. So let's talk about that as we move forward, okay?
Okay.
And we're going to come back to this in a minute. So this little orphan.
Yes. I had 2 little orphans, okay, and they are pretty sad little guys. So what do you do with just one? These are small, so it's, it finishes out to about 6 by 6. And so for me, one of the best ideas is either a small wall hanging or a pillow. And this is one that I took its brother and pieced into just with the solid red around it.
Okay.
It's a very simple compilation. This is, if you're just starting out and you only have one block, but you want to learn this technique, this is a great way to do it because you don't have that huge expenditure of time, of resources. Let's play with one block and see how it works.
So this is pieced in, it's not applique.
I pieced it in.
Okay, great.
I pieced it in, and then I did in the ditch quilting just to hold it in place. And then the rest of the quilting are just gentle waves that I do on my sewing machine.
When you have a block that's this frail, do you also support it with something on the back?
If I need to.
Okay.
If it's really fragile, this one's actually pretty sturdy. You can see as I pull on it, none of those seams are coming apart. It's going to press fairly flat.
Okay.
If I'm at all concerned about that, like some of the other pieces in the book, I will either add fusible on the back or another layer of fabric to stabilize.
Some sort of stabilizer.
That.
Right. Okay, so the quilting. So you've done this, it's beautiful, looks like fun. You don't have to be Gina Perks,
No, you do not.
Or Karen McTavish.
No.
Okay, so now what would you do with this?
Okay, I have gone through and put the first layer of stitches in here. And you can see that these are just red lines, red stitches through here. They went in the 4 different directions. So in the corner units, you've got them where they intersect.
Right, okay.
So it adds a little bit of different texture. Well, just red looks kind of plain and kind of boring. So what I'm going to have you do is add some white in there.
See, I would have never thought of this. And I love it because it really adds something to it. Any rules on this quilting here?
The quilting basically, I use the feed dogs stay up.
Okay.
I would extend the stitch length. I do 2 knobs or two buttons.
Oh,
so if you start out
like
at
a 3 or something? Okay.
Okay.
And then just do it?
You're going to do it, and you're just going to do gentle curves, and it works better if you don't stop.
Like this?
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh, this is fun, fun.
Okay, curve back a little bit more.
More like this?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, and when you get to the end, okay, come up about 1 inch.
Oh, look at that white on there. Yes,
All right,
yes.
Turn it and go back the other direction. And what you're going to do is kind of intersect. So do a swirl, go back across, and then go across.
Mary was supposed to demo this, but I said, I want to do it. So let me cut this out and take a look. I love this. It's fun.
It is fun. It is fun. And what I do with these, okay, if you can imagine, if we take all of, white stitches all the way through here,
it's kind of
it adds a
wonky.
layer. Nope, it's supposed to be wonky.
Okay.
It adds a layer of color and a layer of texture. So then what happens if you come back in and you put some navy in there?
Okay, so that's
Or you
what I'm
put some
wondering.
cream in there.
So on this one, you have how many color threads? 2 or 3?
There's probably 3,
Nice.
maybe 4, because
Nice.
what I would do with this, I work with gray a lot, and so when I get to the end of a spool of thread or the end of a bobbin, I'll just keep going until I run out of thread. So these are good projects to have beside you when you're about to run out of a bobbin, just to add those stitches.
Great.
And it lets your machine run, lets my machine run, and lets me kind of relax because I'm not having to do anything.
Okay, so like this got me like so excited I can't stand it. Because, and we'll talk about the label in a bit, but talk about this here.
What's our least favorite thing to do when we make pillows?
Well, to put the zipper in
Put
or
the
whatever.
zipper in,
Yeah.
put the, stitch it shut. I use a man's shirt. I take a shirt. They're all
Great
going,
idea.
Oh my
Yep,
goodness.
yep.
Okay, I take a man's shirt. Okay, it's recycling at its finest. Okay, you either go to your husband's closet or the thrift shop that has button-down placket shirts. I am going to take. This is an example of one. This is a stitching that I did on one that is just a handkerchief. Okay, this is a plain white handkerchief on white that I put gray and black and white thread, and then I put a little bit of orange through there.
Now, did you hand stitch that down?
Nope.
What'd
Nope.
you do?
I laid it out as flat as I could get, and then I put my first layer of stitching in there. I turned it and put another layer of stitching there,
You
and
pasted
it held it in place.
Nice.
And then I go ease of. Very easy.
Okay.
So when I've got as many stitching as I want, I'm going to cut out my my shirt
I just love
to
this.
the correct size. Okay. Sometimes you need a little extra. Piece it. It's fine. This is pieced. There's like 3 different pieces to get it to that square. I always pin the placket shut because if I don't, it's going to cause a lump here, and then I'm going to have to go back in and take it apart. So that's just ease of me not messing it up. So I'm going to put the shirt right sides together with the piece, stitch it all the way around, okay? When I get it done, I'm going to come in and unbutton here, clip the corners, and turn it.
Okay,
All right?
you guys, I heard a woo-hoo out there. Can we have it better than that?
It's like so simple, it's like silly, but it works.
Yeah, but you thought of it. We didn't, okay?
Well, once I get done with that, I will come in, and this one has like a half-inch flange here. Sometimes I'll use a 1-inch flange. It just gives it a little bit of stability, and I like the
A nice finished look. Yeah.
The finished look of that.
Well, John better watch out. Let's just say that. So, okay, I want to talk about labels. This is so important that we do it, but these labels that you do are a lot more important, I'd say, than my labels are.
Well, not more important, but when
they
you're
are.
working with the vintage textiles, there's some things that you need to think about. If you are incorporating family linens or a family shirt, you might use your grandfather's shirts for this. Or if you're incorporating vintage blocks from your grandmother or your mom, I think that information needs to go on this label. This is one that I did. This is called, the pillow's called B is for Bryce. I have twin grandbabies. They're my bebops. And this was for B, this was for Bryce. But I put his picture on here and then all of the information that I had with that. If I'm using it on a piece that I used family linens, I could put my grandmother's picture. I could put my mother's picture. I could put my picture here. Bryce is going to remember that this pillow is his. Okay, but who's to say who's going to look at this pillow later and say, that might have been my daddy's, but I don't remember.
Right.
Or
my grandfather's, but I don't remember.
but I don't remember. I want to give them as much information as possible. When we talked about my flower power quilt, I think that it needs to have my grandmother's picture and that the rickrack came from her.
Right.
So that they know what the importance was to me and why we chose to do that.
And I got to chime in. First of all, I love, love, love. You should have heard the audience out there when you're like shirt and all that aside.
Yeah.
It was like crazy. But because you're an appraiser, that rings true to you because you have to appraise quilts and answer mysteries and sometimes perhaps not even value a quilt as much as it could have been valued if the provenance was written and labeled and put on that quilt.
Absolutely.
Is that true?
Absolutely.
So if you have blocks that you don't know, orphan blocks, where they are from or who had them, whatever, will you say orphan block? I mean, will you get that detailed?
Sometimes I will, you know, or I'll say no provenance, no.
Okay.
Or I will say, like for our pumpkin seed, our pumpkin harvest, I put block circa 1940.
Okay, great.
Repurposed by Mary Kerr, quilted by Gina Parks. And then if I choose to gift that to someone later on, then that information can be added onto
And
the
Nice.
continues
well.
and continues
Nice.
and continues.
Hey, today's show, let me tell you right now, it was so wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
You know, starting with you and your Sumter Rose,
Thank
and
you.
so caveman-y,
Yeah.
they knew about you back then.
They did. They knew about me back in the Civil War.
Right.
They knew I was coming.
That's right, that's right. Thank you for sharing that, Ricky.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And thank you for having me. I've
Well,
thoroughly enjoyed this.
Thank
a pleasure.
you for coming.
Hey, everybody. Merry
Yes,
Christmas.
yes.
Thank you. Absolutely.
And I think it's safe to say that there's no man in the world whose shirts are safe in the closet right now.
At least in the quilting community,
Right,
that's for sure.
exactly.
Everyone, thanks for joining us. Audience, thank you for being here. Everyone, remember, it's a new day every day. It certainly is. Thank you. Remember, we're not quite done. There's still the after set right after the credits.
Mary, it's my understanding that your whole family are artists. In fact, you have a connection with your son, right?
Yes, my oldest son. Sean took, well, both of my two older ones, my daughter and my son, took Ricky's photography class.
They did. And it was interesting because, I mean, truly, you know, you've been around, but I did not know you till Houston this past year. And when we went up and I was looking at this exhibit, getting all very excited about it, and I see Mary Kerr, and she goes, you know, my kids have been in your photography class. And I went, Kerr. I mean, and the bell went off, and I immediately jumped on a photograph that I remembered, and I said, it's one of my most memorable photographs. Right. So I teach a 52-week photo class.
I'm taking it this round.
Alex is in the class this year, but the photograph that I'm going to show, there it is. There's the picture with Sean. Sean took the picture, so I don't know how he had the tripod all set up or whatever, but it was a do-over because we do a do-over every now and then on if you didn't do so good on a particular challenge, you can redo. And the challenge was elements, and so they could use water, earth, wind, or fire, whatever, and he did water. And can we go back to that picture? Because honestly, I just love that photo.
And I'm thinking, man, was it freezing? Were you with him when he did that?
No, he was by himself.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
From what I understand, I don't know how he did it. I really don't.
And then Catherine, of course, participated throughout the year, and that was fabulous.
And then she had 4 babies and didn't have time.
And so then is your husband also an artist?
My husband was an art major. He majored in pottery and photography. And he has supported us throughout the years. He no longer works in the art field. And all of the kids play musical instruments. We come from lots of creative stuff.
Have you always been on quilting? Was there something before that in the world of art?
No.
Wow.
No, not really. I was a sociology major.
Okay.
So I majored in social gerontology.
So
Death and dying. That fits with quilting.
We always ask a very quirky question. Do you have any collections, anything that's odd in your life, perhaps, that that just you embrace?
We have collected face jugs. We grew up in North Georgia, and North Georgia has there's a picture of
Those
some
are quite
of them.
unusual.
We were painting, and so they're not all usually grouped that close together. We were painting, and
do you got Ricky? No, that's you.
North Georgia has a wonderful tradition of pottery. The Metters family were doing pottery in the 30s and 40s, and we have a couple of their pieces. But as the years have gone by, we keep finding new artists. And so when I travel, I'll often bring back gifts for my husband of these ugly face jugs.
Well, you know, actually, we found one that we thought could fit just beautifully in your collection, and you might want to take home.
Keep spinning.
Keep spinning?
Keep spinning.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you.
There we are.
It'll fit right in.
It will. That'll be perfect.
Mary,
Absolutely.
thank
I'll
you.
think of you when I drink my coffee in the morning.
No, you might get sick to your stomach.
I'll wait till the adult beverages and then I'll
Right, that's right. Thank you so much for spending your day with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You've opened my eyes.
Thank you.